Welcome, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking about reimagining Christmas. And you know how we get these catchphrases that pop up in culture. And as we move to Christmas 2020, we're joined by Beth Kempton. She joins us all the way from Devon, England, and she has written an incredible book. It's entitled Calm Christmas and a Happy New Year, a little book of festive joy. Good afternoon to you and your part of the world, Beth.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. And so before we started filming, we were talking about Christmas, and what is common to everybody in every part of the world is we have all experienced the pandemic. And so we are trying to reimagine what Christmas will look like, because it won't be like Christmases where we had the opportunity or the right to make the decision to gather like we wanted to. And so tell us about writing this book.
It is a real privilege to write about Christmas because I think it's a part of so many people's lives. And the timing of this book has actually been amazing this year because there's an opportunity for Christmas to be a highlight in what has been such a difficult year for so many people. So I'm so glad that I had the experience of writing it. And in doing so, I spoke to so many people about their experiences of Christmas, which are often connected to childhood memories, but also to very challenging things like a pursuit of perfection and being in debt and family tension and lots of things that come with Christmas. And I feel that this year, more than ever, it's an opportunity to do something special, but there is also a risk of it being more stressful than ever because of these restrictions and because we're all carrying so much still from what we've experienced this year.
Sure.
So it's a really good time, I think, to pause and think about what we want to bring to life this Christmas, so it can be a moment of rest and reflection and joyful celebration, not something that's another stressful thing this year.
Sure. And so, Beth, when you started on this journey for this particular book, was it going to be about Christmas, or was it intentional with everything that was going on in the world?
It was always about Christmas. And the reason was that I have loved Christmas since I was a little girl. But when I had my first child, she was born on Christmas Day.
Amazing.
Which I think when she was born, she was supposed to be born on the 11th of December, but when it became very clear it was going to be Christmas Day, I felt like, well, obviously it would be Christmas Day because you've loved Christmas so much all your life. And I had so many ideas about what Christmas would be like with children. And then it wasn't always like that, especially when they were really small. Obviously the day she was born, we didn't do much except stare at our baby and eat pizza. But the year after, when it was a combination of her first birthday and baby's first Christmas, and friends and family were so generous, but we were just completely overloaded with presents, and Christmas just seemed like it had been completely skewed suddenly with a baby in the mix. And then the following year, she was a toddler and I had a brand new baby, and we invited all my family around for Christmas, and my family are lovely. But we said, put your feet up, we'll do it all. And it was the most stressful experience I've ever had of Christmas. And my husband and I just fell onto the sofa at the end of the day and looked at each other and said, what just happened? And this is not what we want Christmas to be for our children. We had really precious Christmas memories growing up. And we want this to be a time where we come together as a family, and it's almost like the whole world slows and we're our unit, and we have an opportunity to pause and be grateful for each other, and just really be with each other at that time, not have all these things that we have to do. And I think that's what started the journey of this book. My eldest will turn 7 on Christmas Day this year, so it's obviously been a few years in the process, but I wanted to understand whether it was just me having this experience or whether other people were too. And I researched, I interviewed hundreds of people in the process of putting the book together, and learned many interesting things about what Christmas means to all of us.
Absolutely. And as we have experienced everybody in the world, it almost puts us on sort of equal footing this year because we have all, no matter where you are in the world, experienced the pandemic. And so now we're having to, what they're calling, reimagine Christmas and really take a deeper dive into what Christmas really means. And so after you started talking to people on this journey, what did you find that people were, how they were going to experience Christmas this year as opposed to Christmases past?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that this year has made people almost reimagine their own lives, actually, to realize what matters to them. There were so many things they thought mattered that just either fell away or got pulled away. And especially when we were left in what we called lockdown, sheltering in place for you, we would just had so many of the things we take for granted were gone. And I know from talking to so many people in my community and my friends about how people really realise what matters to them. And I think if we can bring that to Christmas as well and bring it back to what it's all about, which is different for everybody,
right,
that's going to make a huge difference this year. So when I was researching, I thought maybe there's a symbol of Christmas that everybody associates with Christmas, you know, whether that's a Christmas tree or roast turkey or Christmas carols or whatever it is. And when I spoke to all these people, I figured out that there actually isn't a single symbol of a traditional Christmas that we all associate with Christmas. We all come at it from such different backgrounds and ideas and memories and things. But what I did realise was that people associated with what I've come to call the 5 stories of Christmas, and each one of them to a different level, depending on your own experiences and what you love about Christmas. And those 5 stories were the story of faith, which is incredibly important to some people, not an aspect of Christmas at all for other people. So you have that story. And then you have the story of magic with Santa Claus, Father Christmas, whatever you call him, and, you know, reindeer flying through the sky and that whole magical element of Christmas, which again is everything to some people and not at all important to others. And then you have the story of connection, which I associate with the kind of Dickensian Christmas and a lot of our traditions like the Christmas tree and that we gather around and sending Christmas cards, which is about connecting with each other and feasting. And again, that's about connecting. So that's a story of connection. And then a story of abundance, which is really where we come to buy people lots of presents and it's become very commercial. But the commercial aspect of abundance is just really when it's very showy. But there's nothing wrong with feeling like we want to be generous at this time of year. So that story plays out in different ways too. And then the story of heritage, which is all of your own family traditions or the traditions that come from your particular culture or your background or where you live in the world. You know, if you have very different weather to what I've got here, it's not dark and rain, you live on a beach in Australia, there's a kind of heritage story related to how you see Christmas too. And then also for people who celebrate midwinter, you know, and bringing evergreens into the house and looking for the return of the light. So if you then, within the book, I share a way of mapping out how you relate to each of those 5 stories. And then if you do the same for the people that you share Christmas with, it's absolutely fascinating because you get a brilliant picture of actually what Christmas really means to you and which bits of it don't matter. And if you can release the bits that don't matter, or if you realise that someone you live with really loves something that you're not that bothered about, then you can figure out how to honour that for them. But also realise what matters to you so that you don't go through Christmas and put all this effort into preparations and then come to January and say something was missing because you haven't honoured that particular story of Christmas that's important for you.
Absolutely. Hold that thought. Our guest this morning is Beth Kempton, and we're talking about Calm Christmas and a Happy New Year, a little book of festive joy. And the operative word, hopefully, is joy. Stay on point. We're back with more of this conversation after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking about Christmas and how this Christmas 2020, will be different for pretty much everybody in the world on different levels. Beth Kempton is our guest this morning. She joins us from Devon, England, and we're talking about her book, Calm Christmas and a Happy New Year, a little book of festive joy. And during the break, I was telling Beth that for me, as I was talking to our radio audience this morning, I was talking about really being good stewards over the time that we have and understanding the difference between happiness and joy. And I think within those stories, you can look at everybody's idea of what Christmas is to them. And most importantly, I think that over the years, many people have commercialized Christmas, and it's been about the things.
Yes.
And sometimes when it becomes about the things, we forget about the joy of Jesus, for me personally, being the reason for the season and my faith. And so this year, reimagining Christmas and not being able to maybe come together the way that people normally have and would, how do we look at it in a different perspective, still holding on to what you thought Christmas meant, and maybe even imagining what it really means?
Well, I love that question about the difference between happiness and joy. I mean, that's a big question for life anyway. And to me, happiness feels like a state that we're trying to preserve over time, whereas joy is very often a momentary thing. And it's when there's a real connection between ourselves and somebody else, or a connection between ourselves and our own experience of life, right? So I find I really experience joy at Christmas in things like a particular moment at if I think of memories that spark joy, my daughter's very first candlelit carol service in a very, very old chapel where she couldn't read yet, but she'd learnt to sing a Christmas carol. And she was there with all her new friends, and we'd only just moved here. So we hardly knew anyone, and we just felt incredibly grateful for our community. We were surrounded by all these new friends in this beautiful building that held hundreds of years of people's stories. And there was my daughter being brave and surrounded by candles, and we were drinking mulled wine, and it was just the essence of Christmas in that moment. And I felt really, really emotional, but it was pure joy. And of course, I carried on, and that service went on for 2 hours or whatever. But there was a moment in it that was just an exquisite experience. And I think we can have that so often in Christmas. Just as you say, if we can forget about the things and just watch what's going on. And maybe it is that actually our child wants a particular toy, and it would mean so much to them if they got it, and they get it. But the thing is not that they got it. The thing is their face when they open it, and all that anticipation that's been building, and that, oh my goodness, Father Christmas is real, and that moment of magic. So I think the more we can tune into the moments in the middle of the chaos, the more we experience joy. And it's really important, I think, to remember that, and a time when so many people are going to be experiencing difficult emotions this Christmas. So many people will be grieving something, whether they have lost somebody this year, whether they have lost an important part of their life, like their job, whether they have just what they're grieving is their old life that they know is not going to come back because so much has changed. And that's a really big emotion to carry at this time of year. So, but you can still find moments of joy even with all of that going on. And I think that's a lot easier to try and do than to feel happy over Christmas.
Absolutely.
If that is not right for you this year,
Right. And with that said, as people are gathering, one of the things that you talk about is the mindfulness piece and really coming back to the center, because it is going to be different. People, I know in our community, in our state, a lot of people, their lives will not be, their reality will not be the same as it was last year or Christmases past, because everything has changed.
Yeah.
Whether it's food insecurity for some people, whether it's not having the extra money to make Christmas commercial, to buy the kids everything that they want. It is going to be different. So how can people find that center, especially if their center is not faith-based?
I think being intentional about the season is a really good place to begin. So to think about what kind of Christmas you want and need this year, and use that as a filter for everything. So if you financially have had a very, very difficult year, then what you need is not a commercial Christmas. Maybe it's something like a cozy family Christmas, which is more about the atmosphere that is created than the things that are exchanged. And then if you use that as a filter for everything, do I create this whole gathering that, maybe gatherings cost a lot of money? What if I'm gathering with people, what is the point of doing that? What's the reason I want to bring these particular people together? If it is spending money on presents, is there a way of doing it that doesn't involve just shelling out money? Can we develop experiences? Can we build surprise and anticipation and magic into it? It's a really small present, but could we send them on a treasure hunt to find it? So bringing those opportunities for other people to have moments of joy within the gathering. And then to go back to your original question, which I didn't get to before, about, well, what if we can't gather? And lots of people aren't going to be having a big family Christmas or a huge party like some people do at this time of year. And I think to come back to that human connection, who is it that you really want to connect with over Christmas? And how can you be creative about doing that? So, for example, with my own parents, we are allowed to gather in small groups here, but my parents have decided they don't want us to. They're in their 70s and they've said it's not worth it. And so we sent them a box in the post a couple of days ago with a whole series of presents, many of them tiny things my children have made, but they've got time tags on them. So for 8 a.m., 10 a.m., to noon, 2 p.m. So they've got presents to open all through the day, and every tag has got a photograph of my children on it, so that they feel that we're with them. And everyone's family is different, but you'll know if you take a few minutes to get creative and think, how can we really connect on the day? And of course you can use technology and put Zoom on and cook your dinner together, and there are things that we can do. But I think if we're not trying to make it like it has been in the past and embrace the fact that it's different, for some people that's actually going to be a really welcome excuse that they don't have to travel across the country like they always do. And so to find the silver linings in this, throughout the whole of the pandemic, one question I really made myself answer over and over again was, what if this is happening for you, not to you?
Oh, that's good. What if this is happening for you, not to you?
Yeah. And so of course, not all the difficult, like the pain of losing all the things we've lost, but the space that it has opened up. Look for those things, and it's amazing what you will see in the gap that used to be filled with busyness.
Powerful. Let's take a break here, but when we come back, Beth, I want to talk about the new year, a happy new year, and how we come out of 2020, if we're blessed to come out of 2020 and move into 2021 with an attitude of gratitude. Beth Kempton is our guest this morning, and we're talking about Calm Christmas and a Happy New Year. Stay on point. We're back with more after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is joining us. It's afternoon in Devon, England, and we're talking about her book, Calm Christmas and a Happy New Year, a little book of festive joy. And I think it's such an incredible book, Beth, because we all need to understand the calm. Because, see, in Louisiana where we are, we have a lot of storms. We have hurricanes. But what happens is that we have a storm, but there's always a calm. And we have to look for that, and we have to embrace the calm, because the pandemic has been a storm of sorts. But even in the storm, they don't last forever. There's always a calm that comes. And what your book does is it really makes us look for what Christmas really means, not what we have created, but what this year is going to be different, and how do we make it different so that we don't have the same things that we've always had. For some people, there's so much anxiety about coming together with family that, all of these issues bubble up, because that's just what happens every year. But this year, maybe people that you had those issues with may not even be here. may not, you won't be able to gather with those people. So how do we make it special? And I wondered, as you were exploring all of these stories, was there a common thread in all of these stories that was just very, very similar for every story, no matter how you experience Christmas or what your beliefs were about Christmas?
I think the common thread is that the way to a calm Christmas, but really a meaningful Christmas, is finding what is meaningful to you. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same in Christmas and in life. And if this year has been anything, it's been an opportunity to look at that. I love what you've been saying about the calm in the storm. It's so true. Nothing lasts forever. The worst storm always blows through. Yes, it leaves destruction in its wake, but we rebuild and we find new ways of doing things. And there are some opportunities that come about because that storm hits. That we can't see it when we're being battered by the wind and the rain, but they will be there because they always are. And I think if there's one thing that we know is it's that famous phrase, the only constant is change. Right. It's true. The only thing we know for sure as a fundamental rule of nature is that everything is changing and nothing is permanent. And I think we've all become so resilient this year, which is an amazing it's not a skill, but it's an amazing thing to cultivate in your life. And if we can keep that and become able to move with the winds that are buffeting us as we go through life, it's going to serve us really well. So if we can use this particular Christmas, which may have a bit more space in it, like you say, if we can't get together with all those people who often stress us out, we have a little bit of peace, then what an amazing time to reflect on the year that has gone, but also just all of life so far. We don't know how many Christmases we have left in our own lives. We don't know how many Christmases our loved ones have left. Life is precious. Let's make the most of it. And so I think if we can use this turning point of the year as a moment to think about that and think about what we want to leave in 2020, and just try to relax so that we're not carrying this, 2020 has been so terrible, but actually we learned a lot, we grew a lot, we became stronger, and we don't need to bring these things with us, but these ways that we've grown, we can carry that. And 2021 offers hope and opportunity that we might not yet be able to see, but we know from our experience of every single storm that it is waiting for us.
Absolutely. And I was saying to our radio audience this morning, and just to your point about change, if 2020 did nothing else, we all had to change. We had to change the way we looked at life. We had to change the way we did business. We had to change in every way imaginable. And what we don't desire most as people is change. Why? Because I like doing what I've always done because it's comfortable and I get content and I get complacent. But really, this pandemic has changed us. It's forever changed us. And what's going to have to happen going in my idea into 2020 are new neural pathways. And I use the metaphor of a field that's overgrown, and you're creating a new path. And it's not easy to create a new path because the path that you were on has already been worn, it's visible, but the new path has to be cultivated. And so in the new year, in order to be calm and to allow life to happen, we're going to have to create a new path because the old path it's not going to work anymore because change is imminent.
Yeah, and it's inevitable. It's always going to happen. It's funny because I think we build all these structures. We make our houses out of solid material and we schedule our diaries full because it gives us a sense of control. And that whether it's contentment or complacency, kind of knowing what's going to happen today, even though we really don't, telling us ourselves that we know what's going to happen today, it makes us feel safe, but it's a very precarious safety because it's based on something that's completely untrue. We have no idea what's coming next. And so actually, if we can, make those plans, and, I love planning. It's a wonderful thing to do, have a dream and bring it to life, but also having a bit more flexibility in the way we approach things, that is going to serve us really well. And I think is a safer approach to life too, like being really realistic and open to the fact that we don't know everything. We aren't in control of everything. But life is unfolding in this amazing miracle. And so we can get stressed about it, or we can watch it and be wowed by it. And I think it's a really wonderful time to kind of pause in the chaos and try and look at it with new eyes and say, wow, if I'd known back in January 2020 what was going to come at me, maybe it's better that I didn't know.
Right.
But with all I know now, what can I do differently?
And what about the new year? What, after Christmas and then into the new year, what were your thoughts about 2021 and your expectations?
I feel incredibly hopeful about 2021. I love the
too.
ring of the... You do?
I do.
It's funny, isn't it? And it's difficult to put my finger on why. I think the ring of the number is really lovely. I think for a very long time, from the 1990s and early 2000s, lots of companies talked about 2020 vision and stuff like that. Like everything seemed to build towards this huge year, which it has been, not in the way we expected. And 2021 feels light and airy and who knows kind of a year. And I really want to go into it with an open heart and a kind of light spirit. And one thing I really encourage people not to do is force themselves into New Year's resolutions, because it's, we're animals. We're supposed to be hibernating right now. It's the middle of winter. So instead of just trying to rush into something at the beginning of January, to just gently let the year show itself to you, and be open to what's becoming possible because of all of the craziness that happened last year.
You just hit on my most favorite word in the English language, possibility. What's possible? And that's what 2021 brings, immense possibility. Beth, you're absolutely a light in the world. And we want to thank you for sharing your book with us, Calm Christmas and a Happy New Year, a little book of festive joy. It's just such a poignant book for such a time as this. Before you've got to go, tell people how they can connect with your work, pick your book up, and what's next.
You can find me on Instagram at Beth Kempton. I post all sorts of photos about what I call my perfectly imperfect life. And my website is bethkempton.com. And you can find my book in all good bookshops. I especially encourage people in this climate to be buying from independent bookshops, which we love and want to keep alive. I have a podcast, the Calm Christmas podcast, which you might want to have a listen to all the way through to January, sharing lots more ideas about how to approach the year. But I just want to say this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me.
Right back at you. And you're welcome anytime. Thank you, Beth. And may you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
You too.
Indeed. Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back right after this.